For me and for many other pilots, one of the things that really kind of helps keep the fire burning is cross-country flying. And I realize cross-country flying is not for everybody, but part of the reason I'm here is to maybe encourage some of you who haven't tried cross-country flying to give it a try, or for those of you who have done some cross-country flying to maybe stretch your wings a little bit. And the reason I like cross-country flying is it's an adventure. It's something different. I don't really know when I take off exactly if I'm going to reach my goals and make it back again or end up where I plan to go. I don't know what kind of people I'm going to meet. It's, and the definition of adventure, an exciting or unusual experience. An adventurous, the fourth point here, the adventurous experiences create psychological and physical arousal. Well, that's obviously out of a book or something. It gets you excited. And I can tell that my heart is pumping a little bit. I got a little faster pulse, and when I'm getting ready to go someplace. And just the fact that you never know what fun you're going to have. And some of my most fond memories of my experiences have been things that maybe ended up in an off-field landing, and you go into somebody's house and they feed you or whatever, and it can be quite exciting.
Threaten to run your glider over.
Well, I've had some of those too. So I kind of made a little bit of a list of skills that are necessary for cross-country soaring. Thermal acquisition and centering. That's really one of the basics. Navigation. You got to be able to find your way there and maybe back again if you're planning on coming back. Understanding the weather. Documentation, flight recorders and paperwork. That can be, for me, that's the more difficult part, is following all the rules and so forth. Off-field landings. Jim Hart, of course, is the master of off-field landings, and more than once he's given us some educational presentations about how to go about doing a safe off-field landing. Retrieve preparation. Optimizing cross-country speed, how to be efficient when you're flying cross-country. And then pilot comfort and safety, having to do with fluids and pilot relief and food and so forth. So how does a person acquire all these skills? How do you go about learning all these things? And what I would propose to you is that one of the good ways of learning about cross-country flying, what it takes and how to do it, is the SSA Badge program. It's sort of a graduated stepwise process where you advance your skills, you advance your knowledge, and kind of work your way into it, with the bronze badge kind of sitting in the middle as the pivotal point, leading up to the first cross-country flight and then bigger and bigger goals. So the A badge. How many of you in this room already have an A badge? You all should have an A badge, because basically you have to have pre-flight knowledge in the pre-solo phase and, of course, first solo. Now the B badge is the next step. You demonstrate soaring ability by a solo flight of at least 30 minutes duration after release from a tow to 2,000 feet. Not a huge challenge, but for somebody who's brand new to soaring, hasn't really ever done much of a soaring flight, that's pretty significant. Proving your soaring ability. Then the C badge. Dual soaring practice, including instruction for techniques for soaring thermals, ridges, and waves, or simulation or ground instruction of some of those things. Obviously around here we don't have wave and ridge flying. And then another part of the C badge is knowledge of cross-country procedures, assembly and disassembly, obviously important, retrieving, and some of the hazards involved, because cross-country flying is not without some risks. Our sport in general has its risks, and we try to minimize or control those risks and keep them as small as possible by being aware of them and being properly trained. And then some more parts of the C badge: solo practice, demonstrate ability to do soaring flight for 60 minutes, twice as long, and then while accompanied by an SSA instructor, and I believe all of us are qualified. Andrew, are you an SSA instructor? Yeah, it's not a big deal. We just basically, I think, send a letter to them and they send us back the stuff, but Make a simulated off-field landing approach without reference to the altimeter, and then perform an accuracy landing from the approach. So it's basically one landing without using the altimeter when you have an instructor with you. So that's an introduction to kind of preparing for off-field landings. Now for the bronze badge, and this is kind of what Patty asked me to focus on, you can't really get your bronze badge unless you have already been awarded the ABC badges. And so you can't just jump in and say, okay, I'm going to skip that other stuff. You have to get the ABC badges. You've got to have 15 solo hours and at least 30 solo flights. And they recommend that at least 10 of those be in a single-seater, which is possible in our club because we have a junior. If a single-seater is not available, you don't have to do a single-seater flight. And you're supposed to have at least 2 flights, just log them, at least 2 hours in duration, and then perform at least 3 solo spot landings in a glider witnessed by an SSA instructor. And you're supposed to log dual time with an instructor, during which at least 2 accuracy landings were made without reference to an altimeter, and then pass the closed book written exam, which is what Chris Kimball and I did on Sunday. He had completed all the other requirements. So this is sort of the final preparation before you actually do your first cross-country flight. Well, after you get your bronze badge, then there are 3 components to the silver badge. Duration of 5 hours. Who remembers doing their first 5-hour flight, local flying? Sarah, what do you remember about that? Very boring. And then the altitude gain of 1,000 meters, which on most pretty good days in Minnesota is possible. Most really good days, not average day necessarily. Now things get a little more challenging. And like I mentioned at the beginning, if you're experienced and you've done some of these things, there's always a bigger challenge if you're interested. The goal distance of at least 300 kilometers, goal altitude gain of 3,000 meters, which is about 10,000 feet, something like that. And duration, you don't have to redo the 5 hours, thank goodness. Now, after you're done with your gold, there's still more challenges. The diamond badge, but it's really 3 diamonds. There's the altitude gain of 5,000 meters, the 500-kilometer distance, which can be either a straight-out distance or it can be a closed course, or there's a number of different courses you can fly, but it just has to add up to 500. And then the 300-kilometer over an out and return or triangle course. So tonight, my goal was to sort of provide an invitation to all of you here to stretch your wings. Whether you're relatively new to soaring, like Dana, hopefully kind of give you some ideas, give you something to dream about and work toward. And some of the rest of you who are more experienced, maybe to kind of say, well, if you don't have this particular badge, maybe you want to think about working on it, and maybe even encourage a buddy or two that's hanging around the airport, work on it together. And maybe if we have to go someplace else to get our 5,000 meter altitude gain, maybe we can plan a little trip someplace. So to keep the fire burning, work on improving your skills, learn more about the sport, get some more experience, maybe think about teaching others, mentoring others. And there's always new challenges, higher, farther, faster. Competing with other pilots locally or on a bigger scale, or just making the most of whatever the day brings.